What is up, math superstars? In this edition of Mr. Peterson Presents, I'm bringing to you Objective 6.12. This is all about congruence of polygons. So a polygon is any shape that has multiple sides to it. So we got some definitions here. The first one is similar. In similar polygons, these are polygons that have the same shape, but they're a different size. And then we also have this word down here, congruent. Congruent means that they have the same shape and the same size. And so we have a couple of examples here. We're just going to define figure out if they're congruent, similar, or neither. And so for number one, we have two shapes here. We know they're not congruent because these are not the same size. They look like they're the same shape, so we can classify these as similar. So here in example number 2 here, it looks like they're pretty much the same shape. So we have two triangles here, and they're the same size, so we can label these as congruent. And the good thing is that there's spelling on your paper to help you out. And so here we have number 3, we have two completely different shapes here. They're different shapes and they're different sizes. So we can classify that as neither. So that's neither similar nor congruent. So here we have example number 1 here. We have two triangles and we have a bunch of information all over the place here. So let's tell you what this is about. So if we look at the top triangle, what we have here is on the sides, these are called slash marks. So the slash marks will tell us information about both triangles. And we notice here there's one slash mark on the top triangle. This matches up with a one slash mark on the bottom triangle. We can do the same thing for this side here with two slash marks. On the top one is going to match up with the two slash marks at the bottom one. And we have three slash marks at the top, matches up with the three slash marks on the bottom. So now we can talk about the angles. And so all these triangles are labeled at the angles here. So what we can do is, let's go to match up. These are called arcs. So we have one arc at S. That matches up with the arc on N. And then we can figure out, here's two arcs on B. That matches up with two arcs on P. And last but not least here, we have three arcs at K is going to match up with three arcs on Q. So using this information here, we're going to write out some useful information to talk about these two congruent triangles here. So the first one is we need to actually write out the triangles. So we have triangle. The way we write that is we draw out a triangle, and we're just going to go right around the triangle, starting at the first arc is S, the second arc is B, and where the three arcs are is K. We can say that this triangle is congruent to triangle. N is our first arc. Let's go to our second arc is P, and our third arc is Q. And this order matters because it tells us information about the angles and about the sides here. And so other information, let's talk about the angles. We can say that angle S is congruent. So we have angle S right here as the one arc is congruent to angle N. So we notice that even if we didn't have this picture here, we can see that the first letter here in the triangle SBK matches up with the first letter on triangle NPQ. So we can also say that angle B is congruent, we drew the equal sign with the squiggle on top, to angle P. And then we can also say that angle K is congruent to angle Q. So now we talked about the congruence of all the angles here. So we can also write some information about the sides. And so with their sides, we could say that side length SB, so right here, where we have the three slash marks. So we can say that SB, and we put a line over that, saying that's the line segment, is congruent to, and we can say the next line right there, we say that's congruent to line NP. And so we notice that even if we didn't have the triangle here, we can say that line SB is congruent to line NP. And we can keep going on, figuring out some more information about the sides. So let's talk about BK right here with the one hatch mark. So we can say that BK, line segment BK, is congruent to the line segment with the one hatch mark PQ. And so we have BK and PQ. And so our triangle has three sides, so we got one more side to deal with. We have NQ right along the side here with the two hatch marks. So we have NQ, line segment, sorry, is congruent to our line SK. And so we can also see that in the triangle too. So we have SK, when we actually write it out, is congruent to line NQ. And so we're just determining the congruence of our angles and our sides here. So here we have example number 2. And so for all these examples of congruence, we're going to use our congruent symbol, which is the equal sign with a little squiggly over top. And so we need to figure out how to write out both of these triangles here so that the angles and the sides we can get from the information that we write out. And so once again, we have some information drawn on these triangles. So we have our slash marks here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to color them in because it makes it so I can see it a little easier. So I'm just shading in the slash marks, making sure that they match. The 3 slash marks there. Very nice. So what I'm going to do, let's start out by identifying our triangle here. So we have triangle. Let's go and draw that with a little triangle sign. Triangle ABC is congruent, and the order does matter in how we write this. So A to B, so I'm going to track that here on my triangle. Triangle A to B to C. We got to match up that order right there with our bottom triangle. So we can go E to D to C. And to confirm that, let's go ahead and write out all of the line segments that are congruent from this triangle now. So here we have, let's talk about the line segment AB. Line segment AB should be congruent to line segment ED on our bottom triangle, so it does. Let's go ahead and write that out. So our second line segment should be BC. Line segment BC. That's also can be congruent to line segment DC. Very nice. And then we have a third line segment. Our third line segment is AC. That is also can be congruent to line segments EC. And we know that all of these match up. Based on the hatch marks, we know that we wrote out our two triangles correctly. So now we can talk about the angles here. So we have angle A. So let's write out angle A is oops, that's a really bad congruent sign. Let's try that again. My squiggly wasn't really a squiggle. is congruent, angle A is congruent to angle E. So we're just getting that information right here at the top of what we wrote out with our two triangles. So that means angle B is congruent to angle D. And last but not least, we have angle C that's also congruent to angle C. So now we're not even given the triangles here, but we just got some information here. So complete it, given the statement if triangle DFH is congruent to triangle PWZ. So we're figuring out for number one, angle F is right here in this middle, matches up with the middle angle. It would be angle W. We have angle P for number two, matches up. That's the first letter. Let's match up with the first letter on the other side, which is angle D. And then we have line segment DH. So D to H matches up with line segment P to Z. So you can see how I kind of matched up the letters using that little. I'm just connecting the two letters together to make it easier for me to determine what the line segment is. So then we have line segment ZW matches up with line segment HF. So now, just as a little challenge here, we're going to figure out if these two rectangles are congruent here. So our very first step is we're going to plot out all of the points here. And so let's plot out letter A is -1, +1. Label that as A. B is -1, -4, -1, +4. So I'm always starting in the origin. I go left to right to start, then up or down based on whether there are positives or negatives. So I have -4, +4. Let's go up here, plot C. And then I also have -4, +1 is D. And when I connect all the dots, that makes us a rectangle, which is also a square. Dun, 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 dun. So now let's go do the same thing for E, F, G, and H. So E is on 2, -2. So let's go ahead and plot E. Let's go ahead and plot F. Point F here is 2, -5. Let's plot F. And then we have +5, -5 for G. And then we have H is 5 to -2. Oops, oh man, I gotta connect my dots a little better here. So let's go ahead and, you probably won't see the eraser marks in the video, but I know that I made mistakes, so let's just kind of draw these out here. So now I have two rectangles, also known as squares. And let's figure out some information about these. Let's figure out if these two rectangles are congruent. So from point A to point B, we know that this is 3 units. So we go 1, 2, 3. The B to C is 1, 2, 3. From C to D is 1, 2, 3. And from D to A is 1, 2, 3. So we know that we have these different side lengths. So let's go and figure out E to F. So E to F is 1, 2, 3. F to G is 1, 2, 3. G to H is 1, 2, 3. And H to E is 1, 2, 3. So we determined that these two rectangles would be congruent because they have matching side lengths. And so just like we have the triangle where we draw it out, sometimes you might, given the coordinate grid, you figure out the side lengths, determine if the two rectangles, or squares in this case, are congruent.